All right. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so I grew up in Black church, so we're gonna have a little lesson. So it's called call and response. So you're gonna have to do a little bit better because I need some energy. So we're gonna do it again. Good morning, everyone. See? So much better. Welcome to the fourth annual Gunter-Gooding DEI lecture series focusing on Neurodiversity 2.0, optimizing the gift of neurodiversity. Of all forms of inequity, injustice in health is the most shocking and the most inhuman because it often results in physical death. That is the exact quote that Martin Luther King stated in 1966. I begin every lecture, everything program that comes out of my office with this because it reminds us why we're here. It grounds us in the work that we do. I am Dr. Sheldon Fields. I have the honor and the privilege of being the Associate Dean for Equity and Inclusion and a research professor here in the Ross and Carol Nese College of Nursing at Penn State University. I came here about 5 years ago as the inaugural Associate Dean under the leadership of Dean Badsick. I will be your moderator for today's session. The other thing in which we always also do is we do our Penn State University Acknowledgement of Land. The Pennsylvania State University campuses are located on the original homelands of the Erie, Haudenosaunee, Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk, Tuscarora, Lenape, Delaware, Shawnee, Asante, Easton, Oklahoma, Susquehannock, and Swazizi Osage nations. Say that real quick. As a land-grant institution, we acknowledge and honor the traditional caretakers of these lands and strive to understand and model their responsible stewardship. We also acknowledge the longer history of these lands and our place in that history. This lecture series is named after Dr. Lorraine Martin Gunter and Dr. Marion F. Gooding. And who were they? These two phenomenal African-American women were former directors of the Department of Nursing here at Penn State before we became an independent standalone college that we are today. As you can see, Dr. Gunter was the head of the department in the 1970s, which I think was a huge feat for an African-American woman at that time. Dr. Gooding became the head of the department in 1985. And one of the things that Dean Bazik and I did when I came, we wanted to develop some sort of groundbreaking and historic programming for our college. And hence the reason why this lecture series is named in these two women's honor to celebrate and keep their legacy alive. This program takes a lot of lifting. This program happens annually in the fall, and it's a year in the planning. So I want to start by also thanking the Multicultural Student Nursing Association for being a co-sponsor and the Paul Robeson Cultural Center and its director, Mr. Evan Williams. Evan, wave to the people. That's our PRCC for their phenomenal partnership. There has also been a lot of staff folks that are listed here that have also been instrumental in helping us to get to this point. So if you are a nurse, this program will get you 1 hour of continuing education. But in order to do that, I need to now legally read this. Attendance at this lecture can earn you 1 contact hour through the Penn State Ross and Carol Nese College of Nursing. To receive the 1 contact hour, you must attend the full program and complete the evaluation. Penn State Ross and Carol Nese College of Nursing is approved as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the Pennsylvania State Nurses Association, an accredited approver of the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. The topic of this education is non-clinical, and therefore we did not identify or mitigate disclosures of financial relationships. And again, you will get that link to complete your evaluation and can earn your contact hours upon the completion of our program today. I now have the very distinct honor of bringing you our Dean, Dean Lori Badzik, who will give welcome and remark.
Thank you, Dr. Fields. It's really wonderful to be here, and I'm going to be a little brief today. I have been in more events, and this is sort of our culminating event after, a week and a day of events where we have brought together students, alumni, friends, the entire community of people who support nursing. And I want to say welcome to our friends in the room, our distinguished faculty who support me every day. We even have some emeritus faculty with us today, our students and other colleagues who are interested in this programming. It's really important to me personally, and I just want to share a little something that I don't think many people knew over the weekend. We had a really big celebration of our new space. Some of you were there and know that we really did have a wonderful time cutting the ribbon, displaying our building, which is now open to everyone, and then having a celebration in the evening. But if you were around, you saw these cookies. Well, these cookies were a bit of an honor to me. They had nothing really to do with the building, but they said it was a tribute to the vision. So, as the dean, of course, I was involved heavily in that vision. And this is a compass. I love compasses, and some people know I love compasses. Why do I love a compass? Because compasses remind us that we all need to know where our true north is, both as people and as nurses. And I have spent most of my career working, encouraging, and supporting nurses through the Code of Ethics for Nurses. So I talk about the moral compass, both as my way of life, as well as the way for nursing. So this position that Sheldon now fills, this lecture series that we now have, is all part of what I consider the moral compass for nursing. And I welcome everyone here and so many online to be here today to hear Dr. Lara and our esteemed colleagues from Penn State who will make up the panel later. So again, thank you for letting me make opening remarks, and welcome to everyone.
All right. Thank you, Dean Badzik. One of the other things that I happen to have the honor of doing, and that dovetails with the work that I do here at Penn State. I'm currently the 14th president and CEO of the National Black Nurses Association. So I want to do a special shout out to all of my NBNA colleagues that are online, with the over 157 people that are online at the moment. So absolutely. We really wanted to make sure the series was accessible. And as all of you also know, we are one college geographically dispersed. So we teach nursing on several other Penn State campuses, and they are also having watch parties and participating in our series today. So I really want to send out a special shout out and a welcome to them as well. We're going to start our official program with a performance, an opening performance by spoken word artist Sir Dominique Jordan. If you were here last year, Sir Dominique joined us last year, and it was an absolute crowd favorite. I am incredibly honored that through the partnership with the PRCC, he is able to join us here again today. So I'm going to turn it over to Sir Dominique.
Check, check. Is that good? Sweet. What's going on, everybody? I hope everybody's having a good time. And Hope y'all can learn a little something from this poem. Before I get started, again, I'm a spoken word artist, hip hop artist. I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's always an honor to be able to come share here at Penn State. Last year's event was really special and I learned a lot. And this year I took a different approach with my poem. Yeah, it's an ode to somebody that means something really special to me. So I'm gonna get right into it. If life is an art, then destiny is a stencil. To sketch our future out, ambition must be the pencil. If doubt is the eraser of potential, it's simple. Balance what inspires you, but where you probably never meant to go in the first place. See, we've been cursed in the worst way, by underexposure. I never seen myself doing half of what I done, but I still dream big, hoping better for my sons can only be what we bid. I said, my life, my life, my life, my life, when my sun shines. My life, my life, my life, my life, when my sun shines. They called it noise, the restless clock inside his head, the way he fidgets his hands as they sketch characters on the margins of reality. How answers tend to arrive like weather, sudden, bright, then gone. As a parent, of course, I encourage and I hope, I pray seemingly for a missing thing. I vow to remind him to never hide the way his mind presses against the world, to measure his breaths in classrooms shaped for other hearts, that there's a distinct difference when you're gifted with neurological presence. To my son, a hallway can light up like a cat's curiosity, yet the wrong teacher's assertiveness might leave his throat braiding itself into knots of punctuation, just like his shoestrings when he gets too anxious. When the laughter comes, it's not cruel exactly, but it can also be a clarifying light. A clarifying light that makes him feel transparent, folding himself small and passing for what they expect. But at home, he's a video game engineer, building cities that never need roads. His notebooks hold hieroglyphs of rules of kindness. His imagination could fix society with a paperclip. He hears rhythms in the clatter of chaos that no one else could fathom. My grandmom used to say stuff like, he thinks in color, not in lines. And since you're colorblind, you better mind your business that pays you. She gave him patience like a warm coat in frigid February. And since she's gone now, it's up to me and the rest of the family to guide him and provide him with the same safety and security of knowing he is blessed with differences that will one day make us all proud. And it'll pay him back too. It's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Dominic. Stick around. He has another one at the end. All right. Just so you know, we got lots of hearts, Sir Dominique, on the Zoom here. All right. So the next part of our program brings our students into our programming, and that's really important. One of the other things that I have the distinct honor of being able to do here is to be the faculty advisor to our Multicultural Student Nursing Association. And for the last couple of years, we've been able, with various types of funding, some of which the students raised themselves, and the generosity of our dean's office, to take the students to have an immersive learning experience in Washington, D.C. The National Black Nursing Association, for over 30 years, has an Advocacy Day. It's called the Black Nurses Day on Capitol Hill. This event happens on the first Thursday in February to coincide with the beginning of Black History Month. And again, for over 30 years, we've been going to the Hill to take advocacy from a nursing perspective directly to members of Congress. It is part of what the Nursing Code of Ethics that Dean Badzik mentioned earlier calls us to do as nurse advocates, and being able to speak for those who often do not have the voices, the reach, and the trust that we do as nurses. So I'm going to turn this over to the students from the Multicultural Nursing Student Association, who is going to tell you about their experience taking that trip last February.
Good morning, everyone. Before I would like to get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Antoinette Slaughter, and I'm a third-year nursing student and the vice president of the Multicultural Students Nursing Association, and I'm so happy to be here before you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Imani Adams. I am also a third-year nursing student, and I am the event planner for Multicultural Student Nursing Association, also known as MSNA.
Before we get started, we like to give a strong thank you to our Dean, Dr. Lori Bazik, for providing the resources that support our annual trip to participate in the annual Black Nurses Day on Capitol Hill. We thank you, and we appreciate you for hearing our voices and supporting us as students. We would like to thank our faculty advisors, Dr. Monique Baltazar and Miss Alexis Nicholson. We would also like to thank the Office of the Associate Dean of Equity and Inclusion, Dr. Sheldon Fields and Miss Shannon Holiday. They never fail to stop. I could call them anytime. They are the best. And we just want to say thank you from the bottom of our heart. Like, we appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you.
We'd also like to give a special thanks to the students who were able to attend last year. It was a really good trip, and without them, this wouldn't be possible.
So this is some history on the National Black Nurses Association Incorporated. It was founded in 1971, and this is a professional organization, right? So there's 308,000 African American registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, and nurses students in 113 chapters and 34 states. I am a member myself, so you do not have to be a registered nurse to be a member. You could be a member as a student. The mission is to serve as the voice for Black nurses and diverse populations, ensuring equal access to professional development, promoting educational opportunities, and improving health. So we have so many chapters that offer volunteer hours. You could work with the American Red Cross. They give scholarships on the local and national level, and I'm actually one of the scholarship recipients of this year in the cohort. And for more information, you could visit mbna.org or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
To talk more about the trip, it's a 3-day agenda. So starting with the first day, February 5th, we leave around 7 a.m. and travel from State College to Washington, D.C., which takes about 4 hours. As soon as we get there, we check in and we go to the welcome reception and corporate partner award presentation. This is more so just everybody kind of introducing themselves. It gave us the chance to kind of immerse ourselves in like meeting nurses and kind of network and just talk to people. And, you know, as students, they love to see you coming. They love to meet you. Day 2, which was February 6th, was the actual 37th annual Black Nurses Day on Capitol Hill. It was from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And although that sounds long, it really went really quick. And it was such a fun experience that you didn't even realize what time it was. Even waking up early, you didn't even realize what time it was. And that allowed us to visit the Hill for Representative Thompson and Senator Fetterman. And then on the third day, February 7th, we began the day with Capitol Hill Tour, which was set up by Representative Thompson's office, which we were super appreciative of. We actually ended up getting a tour guide who was from Penn State, so that ended up being really cool. We were able to talk to him about Penn State, and he took us to more things that would be like important to us as Pennsylvania students. Then we were able to visit the National Museum of African American History and Culture, as well as Capitol Hill, where we took our pictures. And then we traveled back from DC to State College.
So, like Dr. Fields touched on, Black History Month is super important to NBNA. NBNA has been going to the Capitol Hill for over 30 years, and we advocate for vulnerable communities and populations. And further on in the presentation, we'll talk about, but we got to visit the Black History Museum. And this is so important because knowing your history prevents history being repeated, right? So we need to know what's going on in our world, and we need to know what happened so we can move on for the better in our future.
Dr. C. Alicia Georges, she was the 5th national president of NBA. So this was earlier in the beginning because now we're on our 14th, which is Dr. Fields. But she was also the founder of the NBNA Black Nurses Day on Capitol Hill. So we want to thank her for her vision and her dedication to Black nurse advocacy, because none of this would be possible without her.
Then we have the 14th NBNA CEO and President, Dr. Sheldon Fields, and he gave us an overall charge for the day. He not only did that, but he supported us throughout the trip. He made sure we were good. If we were hungry, if we needed something, if we were lost, confused, he was there for us. He never, even though he is the president, he is so down to earth with us. He makes sure that we're good no matter what, how busy he is, how many meetings he has. He's always there for his students.
And he's also the founder of my chapter, which is the Greater New York chapter of NBNA. There's also NBNA Health Policy Committee Chair Loretta Lee. She led us through our briefing on the NBNA legislative agenda. So we kind of sat in a room and she went through each of the topics that we would be talking about with our delegates, kind of explaining it more into detail onto topics that like were incorporated with the general topic. And it helped us to understand what we were going in and fighting for.
So the NBNA 2025 legislative agenda, the theme was reimagining health equity, addressing ongoing threats to America's well-being. We were briefed on the following policy agenda items. Is AI the answer to global health equity? Addressing economic wellness to promote global health equity, saving our planet, human activities, a driver of climate change, addressing the global crisis of Black maternal mortality and supporting diversity in the nursing workforce.
My personal favorite part of the whole trip was that we were read in honor of Women Heart Health. So on Thursday, when we went around to the delegates, everyone wore red for that Capitol Hill event. MSNA in the past has held a tabling event in the hub, raising money and awareness for the Black Heart Association, which we plan on doing again this year. But it was just really cool because DC is such a populated place, but everywhere you went, you just saw so much seas of red. You knew that these were all members of NBNA, and it was such a powerful experience just to see all of these people here for the same exact cause.
Like I talked about previously, the policy briefings. So to be a part of these briefings when you're learning about nursing in Penn State and then to see it more on like the global level was really engaging, and I got to understand like nursing outside of just the classroom, right? Like I was able to understand that I could do research. I could do more than just be a nurse in the hospital. Like I have more to offer as a student, and it just like wanted me to push myself to get higher education, to go back for my master's, because this is something that I'm passionate about and I would like to learn in the future. So to have an opportunity like this, which I was granted by our faculty members, this is just pushing us forward and pushing us to like want to learn more about these policy agenda items.
Preparing to go on the Hill. So this was a picture of us last year when we went. This was on the actual Capitol Day Hill before we were about to go out. If you were unable to attend MSNA's first GBM on September 8th, we provided a QR code to sign up for the trip. And I also have the QR code if you want to come after to sign up for the trip as well.
Okay, so this is us outside of Representative Glenn Thompson. This was outside his office after we just got done speaking with him, and our university is in his district, and he's also a Penn State alum. So it was really like important to speak to him and really engaging and having that Penn State connection with him. So when we are speaking to representatives and policy makers, we're talking to them about what we want to see. So when we're speaking with them, we're talking about our issues as Black students, as multicultural students, to give them more insight, because they're speaking to people that they may not speak to on a day-to-day basis. So that's why we're here. We're representing our voices. We're trying to represent every student who wasn't able to come. So we're making sure that they are educated on the topics that we are passionate about, and they should be educated on as well.
We were then able to go see Senator John Fetterman. He was busy, but we were able to see his secretary to talk about the agenda with, and this was a picture of us as well.
And this is our time on the Hill. We not only got to meet with policymakers and change makers, but we also got to explore DC. And for a lot of us, this was our first time in DC. I don't get to go to DC every day. I'm from New York City. There wasn't really a reason for me to go. So for me to get this experience, and a lot of my other fellow nursing students getting this opportunity to go on this trip was really amazing. And we are just, again, so thankful for it.
This is a picture of not everybody that was there, because if you can see, there are some people cut out of the corners. I can't even find myself in this picture. There are so many MBNA members. And then in this corner, we have PSU nursing student Trinity Thompson, who's also our secretary, with Representative Yvette D. Clark, who is part of District of New York. But as you can see, there's a lot of us.
And I would also like to say our other student, Trinity Thompson, is also a scholarship recipient, just showing what NBNA does for their students and why it's important to be a member on like the student level as well. So for this slide, this is the representatives. So Representative Benny Thompson, we have Jonathan Jackson and the Jasmine Crockett. So these are the representatives that spoke at the NBNA conference as well, and the Day on the Hill.
And then we also had more updates from members of Congress, featured morning keynote talk by Katie Boston Leary. She is the Senior Vice President of Equity and Engagement at the American Nurses Enterprise, and that's her talking in this corner over here.
And then we have the interacting and briefings from the members of Congress. So we got to speak to these members, and we got to hear and listen from them, and we got to gain a lot of more insight of what it looks like for on their side of what they're doing, what they're trying to do for us, because these Congress members, we elect them in, right? So they're supposed to do something for us. So these are the people that are trying to advocate for us. So actually hearing what they are planning doing for us and how they are trying to help us was really an engaging and different experience. Also, we have the Divine Nine and other advocates. As a member of the Divine Nine myself, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Seeing the different Divine Nine there and the amount and the presence there was amazing. Seeing my sorors come up to me was like a different experience. So I would just like to shout that out as well, that we have the Divine Nine very present at NBNA as well. Black fraternities and sororities, for those who don't know what the Divine Nine is.
Okay, and then there was a lot of networking receptions. We were able to kind of just sit, talk, and eat, and it was really good food, guys. We got to sit and talk and eat with different nurses. We actually met a nurse last year that we talked to in Texas, who we're also going to see next year. And she was a doctor, and she taught us about like her program and how she like got into nursing, and it was really educational because it helped people who weren't like really sure about where they were going to go into it. But yeah, this is all of us eating and talking.
So then we have the Friday activities. Like I said, we went to the Black History Museum, and this was just such a changing experience. It's such an emotional experience too, to learn about your history in a way that you're literally time traveling back in time. And this was like also some of our first times being there. So to see the different levels of history and where we were and where we are now was really changing. And then we also went to another museum, and that's us right there. And just having so many new experiences that was granted by Dr. Fields and our faculty was just really like amazing.
Okay, so now the important thing, really what we learned. So we learned about Black nurse advocacy, and it's one thing to talk about, but to be in the shoes of actually trying to make that change and talking about making that change, this was this perfect practice for us, and it like made me want to do health like advocacy in the future. We also learned representation and having a seat at the table. You know, like we talk through other people, which is the point of Congress and our senators and our representatives, but actually being able to talk to them directly yourself is very important, and this taught us that. Networking opportunities, again, NBNA is such a large professional organization, and being able to see nurses in different areas, knowing that like we live in different states outside of Pennsylvania, was very like helpful for us. Speaking up because your voice does matter, and then getting involved in a professional nursing organization like NBNA as students. I also again am a student of NBNA, and it's just really good to have different events when I go back home too as well.
We are the future. And I just want to show like what we're doing. And I'm so glad that we were able to articulate ourselves to show you guys what we do and who we are as the Multicultural Students of Nursing Association. Even though we're small, we're mighty.
And yeah, MSNA exists to just provide a space for nursing students to grow and have new experience. So going on this trip was a new experience, but also brought us closer as a organization. And yeah, so if you have any comments or questions, please let us know. Thank you for listening to us today. And please, please, please follow MSNA on social media.
Thank you.
There. All right. So as you can see, part of the education experience at any university is part of what happens outside of the classroom. And again, having the opportunity to really understand that members of Congress that are elected to represent us, because it's always amazing to hear the students when they go, Dr. Fields, we didn't realize that we could actually go and actually meet and talk to our representatives. It's like, well, they do work for you. Some of them don't always know that, and they don't always act like it. But and it's not about convincing somebody of something, but it's really about, again, taking voices that a lot of the representatives may not ever had the opportunity to hear from. And again, it's a conversation. And you never know where these conversations and how they benefit the representatives. Because we assume that they know everything about nurses and nursing issues, and they really do not. As you saw, there is currently one nurse serving in Congress. That's Lauren Underwood, and she's a representative from the state of Illinois. There were three. Edie Bernice Johnson was the first nurse ever elected to Congress out of Texas. Edie Bernice Johnson was also African American. There was another nurse that was elected to Congress who lost her last election, and she was actually, that was Cori Bush from Missouri. So, any questions for the students about their experience? Anyone had a question for the students? All right, Essie, come here, come down.
How would you say that you can use like this information and like help like in your career goals, especially like the experiences that you go through and like NBNA, and how would you say that like that can like benefit you like in your own clinicals that you do today?
Okay, so getting to meet the nurses and getting their education, one of the nurses that we met, we were able to still stay in contact with her. So for her to give us insight on what higher education looks like and how that could set us apart as nurses, and how getting your master's, getting your doctorate will put you in a totally different bracket than just having your BSN. So getting a chance to learn that and how higher education and learning from nurses who've done it and who have their doctorate and know why, especially for us, to keep pushing us to keep going forward. I take that with me every day. And I know that I can't just settle. Like, I just want to keep going because, like I said, the history aspect, like I'm able to do this now, right? So I want to keep doing it. And I want to be able to take advantage of that.
And also, I was told just yesterday that who you know is what gets you there, but what you know is what keeps you there. So, yeah, she's right there actually, but okay, but yeah, so this is really important because this gives you the opportunity to meet people. And again, like I said, it was people from different states. So knowing that I have to go back to New York after I graduate from Penn State is important to have those connections for when I get back, because I don't have the time to make those connections here. And being a part of a chapter at home as well allows me to be like into the chapter and like volunteer with them and meet these people and talk to these people and get help, because honestly, like it's hard to get a job like on your own. And I'm a first generation college student, so this is like the help that I've always needed. And yeah, so this was really important for us in that sense.
That was a great question, by the way.
Your question online? All right. So I have one final question for you. So what would you say to a student who has not been able to engage in any professional nursing organizations yet? What would you encourage them to do?
To join today, it's never too late. It's never too late. You could join right now.
Join MBNA, because when Dr. Fields told me that my freshman year, when I was at my freshman orientation, I was like, I'm not a nurse. Why would I join a nursing organization just yet? But Now I'm a scholarship recipient of NBNA. So that is why you should join NBNA. So make sure you go online and you join. That's what I would like to say.
All right. Thank you all. Go ahead, sir.
Who are nursing students. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Hello. For those of you who are in this space as a nursing student, I feel impacted by the work that you all are doing. And, because I'm a little older, so I'm going to need that support when you all are in your fields. So I know it may be stressful being a nursing student because I can never do it, but continue to move forward. This is truly, truly impactful work, and you are going to go, the world is your oyster, and make it your own. And life is going to be tough, but this is just amazing. And seeing the students on the ground doing the work, keep it up, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. So again, and we truly do have amazing students here at Penn State, but it's really an honor for them to see them every year that we go. Okay, so we're going to now go ahead. We're going to move into the main part of our lecture series. And again, this year we're focusing on Neurodiversity 2.0, optimizing the gift of neurodiversity. If you were here last year, and if you weren't, if you go to our website, the whole lecture series last year is recorded, and you can take a look at it. We delved into the overall general topic of neurodiversity, and it was such a robust response, and people really interacted with it well. And when we looked at the evaluations, it was very clear that we needed to do a follow-up this year and take another deep dive into this topic. And the way in which we're going to proceed is with having a keynote speaker first. And then we're going to be followed by a panel discussion. So I'm going to do a really brief introduction of our keynote speaker. And Dr. Daisy Lara is a dual board certified nurse practitioner specializing in family practice and psychiatric mental health. She is the founder and CEO of Resilio Mental Health Solutions, LLC, and Lara Premier Medical and Psychiatric Services, LLC, and the Resilio Institute. She is also a very proud member and immediate past president of the Philadelphia chapter of the National Association of Hispanic Nurses. So one of the things that we have the opportunity to do, that NBNA does, we work in coalition with the National Coalition of Ethnic Minority Nursing Associations that includes our really great colleagues in the National Association of Hispanic Nurses, the Philippine Nursing Association of America, the Asian Pacific Islander Nursing Association, and ANA-NINA, the Native American, Native Alaskan Nursing Association. And Dr. Lara is a member of NON. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Lara.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is truly an honor. It's truly an honor to be here with you all today. First, I would like to thank and extend my deepest gratitude to Dr. Sheldon Fields and Dr. Bazik for their visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to equity in nursing. Thank you so much. I also want to sincerely thank Penn State University, the nursing department, and community stakeholders who continue to uphold the Gunter-Gooding DEI lecture series. This platform is powerful. I don't think you know how lucky you guys are to be having this program. It creates spaces for nurses to share their stories and experiences to drive change that we all know the nursing profession needs. Everything I talk about today, it's my personal opinion, and it's not affiliated with any organization that I'm connected with. We're at a university, so here are our objectives. Take a couple seconds to read through those. My name is Daisy. I'm an Afro-Latina, Dominican, and Puerto Rican descent. I'm a first-generation daughter of immigrants, and my first language was Spanish, or is Spanish. I knew at a young age that the world and healthcare were not made for people that looked or spoke the language that I spoke. This was the beginning of my nursing journey. I was full of dreams, questions, determination, aspirations. I couldn't have imagined what the nursing profession, where the nursing profession would take me, or the path that I would go in, or the impact that I would make. I knew very little about the ANA Code of Ethics in this picture. Really, I had no idea. But what I did know was that I wanted to take care of people. I wanted to make them feel good. During my career, I have worked at the bedside. When I worked as a provider, I've worked inpatient as well as outpatient. But I continue to see that my moral compass did not align with many organizations that I worked for. I saw over and over Spanish-speaking patients falling through the cracks because healthcare was not seeing them. In 2021, my community was also dealing with a mental health crisis. They were losing teens to suicide at alarming rates. I knew I had to make a change and strategically decided to open my practice in Downingtown, where most of the teens were from. I decided I was going to do it my way. I wasn't going to allow insurance to dictate the care that I was going to provide to my patients. So I became a nurse entrepreneur and founded Resilio Mental Health Solutions. It started with a vision to create a place of refuge for all my patients, especially those overlooked by traditional systems. I wanted to provide affirmative care to all, provide quality mental health care where adolescents, Spanish-speaking families, and those marginalized felt seen, heard, valued, and felt safe. We build our care around the individuals that we serve. I'm proud to say that we were the first nurse practitioner-led private practice in my community, and that we have not one, but 2 Spanish-speaking nurse practitioners that treat both the adolescent and adult population. Yeah, y'all can clap. I also created Resilio Institute. It was developed due to a growing need of mentorship and support for psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners. I wanted to be what I didn't have during my journey, from novice nurse to nurse practitioner, and now as a nurse entrepreneur. When I started, I had to figure it all out by myself. I wanted to create a training and mentorship program that committed to shaping future nurse entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers, providing guidance and navigating leadership, ethics, improving clinical skills, and developing and managing a business with integrity and purpose. Our mission is to support nurses at every stage, from students, new graduates, and entrepreneurs. Did you know that less than 6% of mental health providers speak Spanish? Less than 6%. For psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners, the gap is even wider. My goal is to elevate Hispanic psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners to close that gap. The American Nurses Association has the Code of Ethics. It's our Bible. our soul, our spine. It upholds our profession. The first ANA Code of Ethics was published in 1950. It provided the obligation, values, and duties of every nurse. Most recently, the 2015 Code of Ethics was revised, and it took over 2 years to do. It included deep conversations, collaboration, listening to lived experiences, and holding each other accountable. I just want to take a moment to thank every nurse who raised their voice during the public comment when we had our period of public comment. I thank you, and your insights shaped the newly revised Code of Ethics. I'm diving into the Code of Ethics because, like I said, it's our Bible. And if we don't know what we're supposed to do, then we usually slip up, right? So I'm diving a little deep into this so you guys can understand. The Code of Ethics is divided into specific provisions, and for each provision, it has an interpretation statements to explain in detail how it can pertain to your everyday life as a nurse. Provision 1 through 3 emphasize nurse to patient relationship, which looks at more of direct patient care. Provision 4 to 6 address interactions among nurses and colleagues. Collaboration is huge in nursing, so that breaks that down. Provision 7 to 9 focuses on the nurse to society, capturing roles that go beyond the bedside, and looks at structures and policy engagement. And then the new one, Provision 10. So that's an update in 2025's revision. It looks at the nurse to a global context. And that was, we had COVID. So we had to change things to let nurses know what to do in that situation. So it looks at more evolving scope of nursing commitment worldwide. And I listed all the provisions here. At the end of my presentation, I will show you where you can obtain your own copy. But I figured to list them all. We're not going to go through them because we're going to focus on Provision 1. The revision of the 2025 Code of Ethics is monumental and will go down in history. It is not just a policy update. I am so proud to be an expert panel member for the new 2025 revised Code of Ethics. I have worked and learned from all of these nurse leaders across the nation. This is everybody that was involved in the revision of the Code of Ethics, along with 6,000 other nurses nationally who contributed during the public comment. And I'm right there, you see me? Like I said, it was over 2 years of work, but it was needed, and I'm just so proud of it. For the first time, racism is named as an ethical violation. Why is that important? I mean, I thought it was already in there. Like, that's common sense to me, but it wasn't. So we worked tirelessly to add that in. And it wasn't just us, like the nurses spoke. The Code of Ethics gives the ethical authority to challenge discriminatory policies and behaviors. We did not just update language, we broke generational silence. Racism has no place in nursing. It can't be within our scope, our classrooms, or our leadership. Provision 10 is the new provision. It was added to expand nursing ethics beyond individual care to system-wide, global, and structural levels. And this is a call for nurses to lead change in practice and policy, education, and advocacy. This is the one we're going to focus on. Provision one, it's our heartbeat. It is the reason why, as nurses, when we have a patient who is alone, who is afraid, and it's the end of our shift, it's the reason we stay. We stay with their families, we stay with them. It is the reason why you remain by their side, advocating for them. This provision keeps us grounded. It reminds us that it's our obligation to treat all patients with humility, compassion, respect, and dignity. And I said all patients. Provision one is a non-negotiable. Individuals who are neurodiverse face many adversities. Neurodivergence is not a diagnosis. It is a term that describes natural cognitive variations. It is not something that can be fixed or treated. It is a way that someone views the world. Not one person's brain is the same. Neurodiversity may show up as someone in your classroom being shy, introverted, anxious, distant, maybe too sensitive. Neurodivergent people may process communication and interact with the world differently. These differences often come with strengths like creativity, focus, attention to detail, and innovation. Inclusion requires disrupting environments built solely for neurotypical norms. We need to stop following compliance-based care and start thinking of humans. That's number one. Here are some of types of neurodivergence. Neurodivergent individuals are everywhere. They could be a patient trying to figure things out, or students in a classroom, faculty dealing with their own neurocognitive needs, nurses, providers, leaders, all in the clinical setting. Nurses must use affirming neurodivergent people of color. Ableism is the belief that neurotypical ways of thinking, behaving, or interacting are superior, more evaluation, or more acceptable than the neurodivergent way. Nurses must use a culturally aware, anti-racist lens when affirming neurodivergent patients of color. They may not receive necessary interventions, therapies, or accommodation. This can affect their education, employment, every aspect of their life. Neurodivergent individuals often struggle in silence, thinking something's wrong with them. They may be punished for behaviors that are misunderstood, rather than supported and affirmed. Being misdiagnosed can lead to being prescribed the wrong medications, missed opportunities, the individual blaming themselves for not fitting in, experience chronic imposter syndrome, being exhausted, masking their traits to just appear quote unquote normal, or stop obtaining care due to mistrust and, quite frankly, medical trauma. Professors, do you want to be a barrier or a bridge for the success of your students? These are some questions I have listed there for something just to think about. Students, if you are neurodivergent, You belong here. Your mind is not a problem to be solved. The nursing profession needs your perspective. The time to affirm care is now. I have listed some ways that we can start doing this immediately. And these are some things that I do at my practice when I meet with my patients. I ask them, is the lighting, noise level okay with you? Take your time, right? We don't want to rush our patients. I know that nursing is all about productivity, being fast, being efficient, time management, but we need to slow down. And we need to remember provision one. Provision one is we focus on the patient, their humility, their dignity. So always try to take your time, make them feel safe. What helps you feel safe here? These are some questions that I usually ask. Of course, I have a call to action. How will you upload provision one with your patients, your peers, your students, and your faculty? As nurses, we hold great power. We are able to change lives. We must uphold the code of ethics because everyone deserves affirming care. We're massive. The nursing profession is huge. And it's so important that the students talked about their involvement with their organizations and how collectively the impact when they all wore red and walked into Capitol Hill, what that showed. Can you imagine if all of us here in this room and all the ones watching, nurses, we're a huge group. We really need to collectively join together and start making changes. This is the website, codeofethics.ana.org, where you can go and download a copy. If you want a hard copy, you can also get it mailed to you. Thank you all for your time and continued desire to elevate the nursing profession. You can always reach out to me. There's my email or find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so let's thank Dr. Lara for grounding us in connecting our code of ethics to the topic of neurodiversity. And again, the code that came out in May during National Nurses Month, Nurses Week, everything nurses happens in May. Don't ask me why. Well, we know why. It's Florence Nightingale's birthday, and it's also Mary Mahoney's birthday too. So it ends on one of their birthdays. It starts on one of their birthdays and it ends on the other. They both just so happen to have been born in May. Questions for Dr. Lara? Immediate questions? Yes.
Could you clarify for the students if the downloaded code is still free? They just need to log in, give some basic information, and the down there's
Yes, so I know that the paper copy, there is a cost to it. The downloaded version, now that you said that, I don't know if it's cut off. I thought that that they could download for free. And then you could always kind of dive in because it goes into each provision. You can click on it and it breaks it down. So it's kind of cool to just go in there. It's a great reference point for any of your papers. But yeah, definitely go in, download it. It's free as far as I know.
Anyone else have a? All right. So what we're going to do now is Dr. Lara is going to be joined on a panel by two other experts. So let me get their bios and I'll bring them up and we're going to have a discussion. We are really fortunate that we have two other experts that are going to join us today on our panel. The first one is Dr. Michael Hannon. Dr. Hannon is a proud member. Dr. Hannon he describes himself, this is his definition, his description, is a Black man, husband, and father who also happens to be a counselor, professor, and author. His personal and professional roles inspire his community work to unapologetically advocate for the well-being of Black fathers and father figures, particularly fathers of autistic children. Dr. Hannon currently is an associate professor at Montclair State University, where he teaches in the counseling program and prepares counselors to serve clients in educational and community settings. More importantly, Dr. Hannon earned his PhD in counselor education and supervision from Pennsylvania State University. He is an alum. Welcome home, Dr. Hannon. Mr. Terry Watson. Mr. Terry Watson is an accomplished professional speaker, trainer, award-winning author who promotes disability equity in education, racial justice, and community healing. He is the Associate Director for Student Disability Services at Penn State's World Campus and is the founder of Strategies for Justice, BWMP LLC. He also is the father of a neurodivergent son who is a student here at our very own Penn State University Park campus. Please welcome Mr. Watson and Dr. Hannon, who will join Dr. Lara for our discussion. Okay. All right. This earpiece makes me feel like Janet Jackson in her video. That's a cultural reference. I know some of you don't know, don't feature Janet. All right. All right. Well, thank you all. So I'm going to start with Dr. Hannon today. So Dr. Hannon, what strategies do you recommend for fathers to remain grounded and optimistic about their children being diagnosed, particularly in today's socio-political climate?
Test. You can hear me, put your fingers up, give me a thumbs up. First, let me say thank you to everybody who's been here. Shout out to the students who have carved out time in their schedule. I have deep, deep respect for nurses and nursing students. And thank you, Dr. Fields, for convening this in the College of Nursing. Strategies, I think those of us who come from collectivist traditions, who value being in community versus being alone, who are socialized to acknowledge not just our biological family, but our chosen family, like many of the folks who are here, like Dr. Audrey Kareem, who's a member of my chosen family. I have found both in my research and in my lived experience as a father of an autistic young Black man, that community is arguably one of the best predictors of psychological well-being for fathers and father figures of autistic people and neurodivergent people. It's been critical for me as I've sought my own therapeutic support as a trained mental health professional, as a licensed counselor in New Jersey, as a board certified telemental health provider, but also for the last 6 years, a colleague of mine and I, Dr. Robert Nassif, who is a clinical psychologist and based in Philadelphia, we have for the last 6 years run a virtual monthly support group for fathers and father figures of autistic people. And on a monthly basis, it literally brings in over 30 men on a monthly basis in a virtual Zoom room to convene, to learn, to share together in their fatherhood journey connected with autism. And so one of the things I would overwhelmingly suggest without hesitation is to find community. And for those of us who come from collectivist traditions, when we value community and not being alone and not being isolated and autonomy all the time, tap into that ethic of care, right? It is important to acknowledge your cultural ways of being because they may connect with your clients and your patients and your consumers in ways that they haven't even heard before. And so building community and finding community, to me, is probably one of the best ways that I've found, both empirically and in my own lived experience, helps fathers on this journey.
Thank you, Dr. Hannon. But more specifically, where do you think are the challenges that those of you who are working to support those who identify as neurodiverse are going to face, again, specifically with the socio-political environment that we find ourselves in?
To be direct, we live in an environment that is neurotypical, that is cis hetero affirming. And if you're not like that, then they say to us, you're not like us. And so for those of us who are living right now in community with or those of us who are neurodivergent, we have messages coming from federal agencies pathologizing neurodivergence. And we have to be clear about that. We have to be brave in confronting it and naming it as it is. And for those of us who are in the helping professions, I consider myself a sister or a similar helping profession as a counselor to nurses and nurse practitioners and nursing educators. We have to be willing to provide care. So for Dr. Lara saying she was not going to allow insurance to dictate who does and doesn't get care in her community is an act of defiance. And that's the kind of courage we all have to tap into, because if not, when we hear language from the Utah governor, right? And I'm not even trying to go left with this, but there's coded language when people say, I'm glad that person wasn't like us. They were talking about a very specific demographic, and many times neurodivergent people, particularly neurodivergent people of color, are considered to be one of those who are not like us. And so we have to remind ourselves and welcome the community to say, you're welcome here. Your ways of being are welcome here. Your cultural forms of expression are welcome here. And we want to be the right kind of help, not the wrong kind of help.
Thank you, Dr. Hannon. So, Mr. Watson, following up on that, how do we navigate the intersectionality of our neurodiverse students and children and instill them with a sense of dignity and self-advocacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I appreciate what you said too. And I'll be honest, it's tiring. It is real tiring today to do that. And I think about, you all met Isaiah last year. He checks, I call it checks many boxes when we talk about intersectionality, and I think about the conversations I've had with him, because my whole life as his father is to teach him how to sort of bust in the door and make the space his own, and don't be unapologetic when you're doing it, but at the same time, every time we're having these conversations, it seems like a new barrier is being presented, and I remember having a conversation with him recently, well, not recently, but a couple of months ago, when the Secretary of Health classified autism as being a disease. And, and I remember Isaiah was angry, and I always talk to him about anger and how we show our emotions. But as a father, and I want to clarify, as a neurodiverse father, so it's important that I provide space for where his anger can be processed, because his anger is rightfully so. And when he sees, and he's doing great things, he's it's a little clap moment here, he made Dean's List last semester, all A's, he has his internship, he started his own business, and I watch him do all these things, and I have to constantly remind him that he is more than just a person on the spectrum. He is a person who's here to make a difference in the way he sees fit for it. So I think when I'm trying to navigate that as a father and him being a student at the institution that I work at too, I think it's hard, but I think it's also necessary. Nancy, your question?
Absolutely. So I want to, again, encourage you all to go back to the Gunter-Gooding lecture series from last year. Again, it's on our website. And I really want you all to experience what Isaiah had to say to us. He was absolutely amazing. He stole the show. So please avail yourself of that, and you can see exactly what Mr. Watson is talking about and get to know Isaiah a little bit. Turning to Dr. Lara, thank you for the introduction and connecting what we're trying to do here on the topic of neurodiversity with the Code of Ethics, in particular with Provision 1. But how do we hold ourselves and our institutions accountable when Provision 1 is violated, even if it's unintentional?
So we have to remember that whether it's intentional or not, it's going to make an impact on someone's life. So we have to, we really need to do better. Seriously, we have to create ways that people can do reporting, whether it's the patient reporting that they felt or they didn't feel seen, but also staff, right? So them feeling that they can come up to administration and find ways to make the changes in our units at the hospital or any outpatient setting. But yeah, we have to keep remembering that the impact of our decisions, of our own biases, because we don't know better, we have to make ways for the changes to come.
Absolutely. So sticking with the Code of Ethics for just one moment, again, you admitted that when you first came into nursing as a nursing student, you were not familiar with the code. So here we are at a university. We have a major school of college of nursing here. We have nursing students here. What do you want to say to the students about their responsibility, and to faculty here about their responsibility to teach people about what's in our new Code of Ethics?
So it's funny because I feel you guys, right? You're just trying to get through school. But I remember my professors telling me about the Code of Ethics. I knew about it, but I didn't have time to read it. I was too busy studying, trying to get done, pass my NCLEX, and just would, if I had an assignment, I would read that one provision and keep it moving. I'm being real. But just like when you go to your job and you're hired somewhere and they tell you read the whole, all the rules and regulations. But what does that do if you know the rules and regulations? Right? It's set in stone. If somebody does something to you, then you could say, well, here in Section A, you violated this. So now you have some ammo to kind of go against your job. Well, same thing with nursing. It dictates what we're supposed to do. But at the same time, let's say you were somewhere and you saw something was wrong, or the patients weren't being treated the right way. You pull out that Code of Ethics, right? And let them know that we need to fix this because it's violating our code. So it's really important that we know the Code of Ethics to support the movements and the change and changing policies. It's important to know it.
Thank you. So one of the things that you also mentioned, which was really important, I just want to make a note of it, that for the very first time in the Nursing Code of Ethics, since it was first published in 1950, it actually states that racism is an ethical violation. And it's hard to believe, as you said, you thought it was already there. The 2015 version of the Nursing Code of Ethics doesn't mention racism, institutional racism, explicitly at all. So I find it encouraging that the panel that you sat on and helped to craft this new code felt the need to actually codify racism as an ethical violation. When we think about how do we connect that to also helping neurodiverse people who in amongst themselves have intersectionality, how would you say that if there are violations along that spectrum, we help and focus on those interculturally neurodiverse intersectional patients that you started your practice to help?
So that question, I kind of got lost there what the initial question was, but that was my main reason of starting my practice, is to make sure that all of my patients were getting the care that they deserve. It took a lot of detail, from the pink that I chose, to the furniture, to the scent of my office. I also thought of my children. I'm a little obsessed, and I know I had them in the picture, but I thought of my kids when I made my office. Like, how would I want my children to come in here? Would I bring my kids as a nursing professional? Because that's what we do as nurses. We're kind of scooping things out, right? So I wanted to make sure that every single detail would make someone feel safe and calm. And I always get that feedback, even from the guy who drops off FedEx. He's like, it's so calm in here. So I think I'm doing all right as far as that. But I still have a lot to learn, right? So it doesn't just stop there. That's why it's important that we have these types of meetings, because it's very interesting to me as a nursing professional to hear Terry talking about his son and the perspective of a parent, right? So I ask a lot of questions when I meet with my patients, because I feel that's the way I learn. Everything's not in a book, right? That's our evidence-based. But you also want to take in consideration the human experience and what each patient is feeling and their family.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. So now I'm going to turn to our other two panelists, because we have a unique opportunity with our two colleagues here. Both of you work in this field as Black fathers, dealing and raising neurodiverse children. And I really want you to talk with the audience about what that experience is like, Dr. Hannon, particularly for Black fathers, with hearing about the news of your child being identified as autistic and/or neurodiverse, and how they can remain not only committed to your child's well-being, but then how do you advocate? And what has that been like for you as you navigate both fatherhood and your profession as a counselor?
Sure. I'll do my best to address those. First, I want to ask, put your hand up if you are in community with anybody who is neurodivergent. That is literally 3/4 of us in here.
Absolutely.
Right. So I want to just reiterate what both my colleagues have said about the importance of humanizing people and not using a label to reduce them to a particular diagnosis or condition. I think about nurses as, like, if you're a sports fan or follow basketball in particular, I think of nurses as point guards. You have to know everybody's job well and possibly be able to execute everybody's job and still help everybody else in the helping space successful if you're not doing that particular job. And so there's a deep respect I have for nurses. And so for my journey and the journey I've learned about with other fathers of color who have autistic or neurodivergent children, I think there's a phenomenon that takes place that unfolds. And I want you to imagine it for the families that you know, or the people that you know who are autistic or neurodivergent. Parents and caregivers, particularly fathers, they begin to suspect differences in their children's milestone attainment. My kid wasn't talking at this particular time. They didn't have expressive language. They didn't walk or engage in other forms of communication. So it raises, if not a red flag, then a yellow flag at least. You don't quite know what to do. So after the suspicion comes, and this is a study that was published, both my wife and I, the smarter and way prettier Dr. Hannon, who's sitting here, we learned based on our own experience, but also talking to other fathers of autistic people. So there's the suspicion of differences in development across the developmental trajectory that I know all of you know as nursing practitioners and nursing students. But then there might be the inclination to go inward, right? Now I might start to isolate and withdraw. So when that father or father figure is in your practice or in your hospital room, you need to engage him. Ask him how he's doing. Ask him if he has questions, right? Because he might begin to go inward. And this is what we learned from about 20 fathers of autistic people, and I'm drawing on my own experience. So there's a suspicion of differences, and then there's a isolation or going inward. But that going inward also is inclusive of taking a deep dive into all things neurodivergent. I might go to a conference but not tell nobody, right? I might read a bunch of articles. I might get familiar with stereotypical presentations of neurodivergent like Rain Man and think my kid is gonna be an autistic savant, right? Recognizing when you've met one neurodivergent person, you've met one, right? The same way you would want somebody to say to you, oh, you and your sister are just like you. Like, I'm not my sister, I'm me, right? The same way. So when that experience is done, and I've begun to have suspect differences in my kids' milestones and in their development, and then begin to go inward and do this deep dive to educate myself. Once I'm finally accepting of my kids' neurodivergence, I have to assess who is safe. So I want you to think about those of you who are in community with neurodivergent people and ask yourself, when they found out their children were developing differently than the other kids in the community, were you safe to tell? Because if you weren't safe to tell, then that father figure and possibly the other caregivers are going to go right back inward and carry that burden. And it's only burden because it's socially constructed. The neurodivergence isn't the burden. The construction of disability is the burden, right? And so there's an assessment that has to take place by those father figures to say, who's safe in my family constellation? Can I tell my own dad? Can I tell my own cousin? Can I tell my own sibling? And whether I can or can't dictates how safe I feel and how much agency I can actually demonstrate. So that's just within the family system. And then secondly, the question is, who's so safe beyond my family system? So that means, can I take my kids over to the Thanksgiving or the Friendsgiving celebration? Is somebody going to say something sideways about my kid that makes me want to not be nice? Right? And we laugh, but this is real, right? Like, you know, am I going to be in a space with friends who have children of similar age and be bombarded with questions about why my kid isn't doing X? And you can fill in the blank. And so these are the things that fathers and father figures, and we've learned in our own research, fathers of color, of autistic people, and this is the process, the orienting process. And so these are the things I think of when it comes to navigating and negotiating the journey. And thankfully, we've been in community with folks who care, like really good nurse practitioners and really good doctors. I mean, we've had some inhumane ones in the past, right? And threatened to file an ethical complaint. But thankfully, the lion's share of our experiences have been with people who love and care for our son and our children in ways that they need and deserve. So those are some of the things that come to mind for me.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. So Terry, you know, you yourself describe yourself as neurodiverse, but you work in disability advocacy space here in higher ed. So talk to us about how do you navigate doing that in higher ed, being neurodiverse yourself, raising a Black neurodiverse college student?
Yeah, that's a great. There we go. Okay. First, I want to piggyback on, because I know that I used to say about diagnosis, and what, you know what I'm talking about, Maggie. As you say, diagnosis for billing purposes only. Doesn't tell me anything about the person themselves. But I love how you say you ask questions, because I remember when Isaiah was diagnosed, he was still Isaiah, right? And I remember there's an author, a CEO of IT, one of those big, I call it, very wealthy individuals. And his son was, he had a son who was nonverbal and had some other comorbidity disabilities. And he said that when him and his wife were sitting down to decide who's going to be the moneymaker and who's going to stay at home, his wife, who he described as also being smarter than he was, right? Yeah, she told him that I'll prepare our son for the world, and you prepare the world for our son. Say that. And I think having that purpose, like going back to your question, having that purpose, and I think when I don't think it's an accident that I landed in disability services. I was just doing a training recently, and HR they said to me, did you ever imagine that you would be, overseeing disability services in an online space? And I said, well, 20 years ago, I didn't even know disability services existed, right? But I believe that it is my purpose to do what I do. And for me, I think when I think about, again, my son going to the institution in which I am doing student advocacy, it is a balance. It is a balance because as a father, you automatically want to be a protector. You want to shield your child from anything that causes harm. But at the same time, I got to prepare my son for a world of harm, right? And that's a very delicate thing to be able to do. And I think as a father who was been neurodiverse his whole life, right? And I've been through the system, I call it the system, I sort of had to make sure that everything that I identified from my childhood to my adulthood, that when Isaiah gets to those spaces, that I'm aware that he can also face it as well. So I think and I'm glad to be on the panel for nurses, because one of the important piece for the medical profession, and I'm also from a counseling background, right? So one of the most important pieces for a medical profession is that every single person is an individual themselves, and you have to really dissect that person's, not just what they're presenting as a diagnosis, but also what they're presenting as, what their environment is, what all the intersectional identities that might come into play. And if you're not able to do that, then that person might not come back. And I think that's one of the biggest things that when I talk to my son about, care providers, is the ones that he like versus the ones that he don't like. And when he's an adult now, he reminds me he's turning 22. But at that point, I won't have any control over who he decides to go see versus who he don't see anymore. And that's the part that's going to be really important for, I think, when you're interacting with folks who are neurodiverse and have multiple intersecting identities. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. So Dr. Hannon, I have a sort of side question for you. So, because you described what we do as nurses as being point guards, as somebody who has no basketball ability, who is a nurse, I'm gonna need a different analogy and a different sport.
That's fair.
My basketball was not my ministry. That was my brother.
Understood. It wasn't my ministry either. I'm just a fan. Right.
I understand. I understand. So, Dr. Lara, I'm going to come back to you because, I think you described yourself as a nurse entrepreneur, and I describe myself as one. I have my own company as well. But how can working with healthcare teams move beyond accommodation to truly affirm and celebrate neurodiverse patients? And how do you replicate a practice like yours?
So as far as the accommodation, I think it's just important, just like we're having this conversation here. This is why this is so powerful. Just listening to people's perspectives, creating groups, committees within your units, your hospitals, in order to make change. But you have to involve the individuals to give their perspective, right? We can't just read it in a book. I would have never known his perspective as a parent if I didn't just hear it, right? So the fact that he said, if you see a father, ask him how he's doing. In the nursing is so busy. We're always thinking of 10 things to do, but just taking that one moment will help him deal with the situation. So involving community stakeholders into your committees and really diving in what we're supposed, following the code, the vision of nursing, and how we want healthcare to be. What was the other question? Oh, the replicating the business. Like I said, I ask a lot of questions, right? So I'm always thinking about everyone else. How would I want to feel if I was that person? Trying to understand exactly what it feels like to walk in their shoes. I'm never going to be able to know how it is, but if I ask and I'm surrounded with people, like attending these types of conferences and educating myself, I hope to hone it in. But even the patients that I have now, I'm always asking them, what can I do better? Do you see anything here that you don't like, that makes you feel uncomfortable? And they tell me, and then I fix it, right? So, and as far as replicating, I just think that sometimes we have to forget about saying that it's nursing as a profession. It is, but we're treating humans. So if we can't forget humility. And remember that every person is a human, and we have the power to make a change just by listening and treating them with compassion.
Well, thank you. So I want to open it up so anyone in the panel can address this question. You mentioned, Terry, what the Secretary HHS did in talking about autism as a disease. There has been a shift in sort of how we have discussions about all types of patients, neurodiverse patients, because, it's such a very wide spectrum in how people talk about people who are neurodiverse, some of which includes, outward behaviors that people react to. And to the point that Dr. Lara brought up, that, that shy student could also be somewhere along that spectrum. We have future healthcare professionals here in the audience and online. Talk to them. Help us to understand from your varied experiences, what can we do to really advocate for the whole community of neurodiverse people?
I'll give it a shot. I think, so I know this is not a straight comparison as a professional counselor, but in our profession, we'll take a counseling techniques course and we basically learn how to listen well, right? We call it the shut up and listen course, right? Listen to understand, don't listen to respond. And I think that in the midst of trying to respond to the needs and be affirming in our care and the provision that we provide, the care provision that we offer, I would say remember that all behavior communicates. All behavior communicates something. So in the same way that you may be in a conflict with a really good friend or a family member, and you fold your arms and you don't say anything, you saying a whole lot, right? Or when you leave a dispute in anger, what you're communicating non-verbally is that I don't have the capacity to talk about this anymore. And so when you have clients, patients, consumers who may not have the words to describe the ways that they're feeling about their symptoms or about the psychological distress of whatever the thing for which they are seeking services, remember that all behavior communicates, and be patient enough to try and interpret and be willing to take a risk in getting it wrong so that hopefully then you can be corrected, right? I sense a little anxiety. No, I'm not anxious. I'm mad as hell, right? Okay, I got it wrong. But at least I'm willing to ask, to listen and be quiet enough to ask and share my interpretation and be corrected. And hopefully in some cases, because you are good readers of body language, you'll probably get it right more times than not, particularly as you progress in your profession. But remember, all behavior communicates, because many times when folks are seeking your help, it could be for something very normative and predictable, or it could be crisis. And depending on the intensity of the reason for which they sought help may dictate how much they talk versus how much they don't talk and still convey the same sentiments that they may not have words for.
It reminds me of one of the tenets that we teach in nursing about how one cannot not communicate. Right. Even in your silence, you speak. Yep. Mr. Watson?
You know, I agree. It reminds me of one of our rules of engagement and SFJ is we talk about silence is one of the things that we appreciate and value. But I think of this. That's a great question, Dr. Sheldon. You know, one big takeaway. So you had a PowerPoint of MLK up there. One of Martin Luther King's speeches that I loved the most was he talked about being maladjusted, right? Being maladjusted to injustice. And I gave a talk back in May, and you know, it was off the book Visibility Disability. By the way, great book for those who would like to read. But I challenged the audience at that time to become maladjusted to ableism. And anytime you occupy a space where ableism is considered the norm, become maladjusted to that. Be like, you know what? This is not the space that we can have at this time. And so I think about one thing as nurses and nurse practitioners is, if you are in a space like any hospital, any clinic, and you see ableism in any form, in neurodiversity, you know, for hearing, vision, you name it, be that voice to say, you know what, I'm not okay with this, and be proud to be maladjusted to ableism.
Thank you. Dr. Lara, any thoughts on how do we advocate for the entire community?
Well, you guys summed it up pretty good. Watching behaviors, listening, right? Just getting involved, right? So we talked a lot about organizations. I'm really big on organizations, just like you. You know, and like I said, it's always good if we're collective. So even if it's a community, a committee at your hospital, or organizations together, finding an issue and together tackling it, right? I don't have any much else to add.
All right. All right. Well, everyone, please join me in thanking Dr. Lara, Dr. Hannon, and Mr. Watson for their comments. I really want to give you all here in the audience and those online, if you have any questions, if you can have one of the students grab a mic for me for the audience. Antoinette, can you grab that mic over there for me? Any questions for our panelists from those present in the room? Anyone? Absolutely.
Sorry, so you asked, or you mentioned safe spaces in the beginning, and how can you tell our nursing students, how do we create those safe spaces for our patients? What made you feel safe, I guess?
The question was, if you didn't hear, how do we create safe spaces for clients or those seeking services, and what made me feel safe? I think being acknowledged is the first thing. We talk about and this ain't rocket science, right? Like it's important to feel seen, heard, and valued anywhere that we go. And LaShawn and I, we have so many stories of us taking our children to medical providers and other therapeutic service providers and them not even acknowledging me, right? Them addressing their mother as mom instead of just asking what she would like to be called. Right? Say, I'm not your mom, right? You know, and so I think for me personally, and I think there's evidence that backs this up, that to acknowledge people's existence by saying hello, by asking them questions, by asking the variety of people who are in the room, how they are, what's troubling, what's helpful. Those are things that have over the years made me feel safe and built my confidence in healthcare providers, in whom I'm skeptical walking in the door, both in educational settings and in clinical or care settings. Being seen, heard, and valued by being acknowledged in the room has made me feel most safe and seen.
Yes. Thank you for that question. Anyone else? Yep, Leslie. I see Leslie's hand. Hey, Leslie.
Such great comments and such insights that you're sharing today. So thank you all. I believe Dr. Lara said we have a choice to be a barrier or a bridge. And so on that philosophy, I would like to know what each of your recommendations are for our children, our students, and ourselves where it comes to breaking down the barrier of access, because the assessment process, even to be able to qualify for assistance, K through 12, college, everywhere, is exorbitant. And most families, people of color, whether they are people of color or not, face the challenge of getting the assessment so that they can get the assistance and breakthrough. I mean, I really am excited to hear that you have been providing outside of insurance care. So I'm sure you have some recommendations on how that might be replicated, or how we get these wonderful nursing students who enjoy advocating on the Hill. They have local offices. I can tell you where they're out, so that we can keep that conversation going.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Anyone?
Well, you know, that's probably one of my biggest, I would say one of my biggest pet peeves these days is we talk about intersectionality, for example, and those who know me in this profession knows that I've been talking about documentation guidelines for a very long time. And not just to prove your disability, which is another issue, by the way. You know, you start talking to students, but also when you look at socioeconomic status, you can have a person who is poor and someone who is rich have the same disability, but have different access to services. And I think that one of the conversations that's been, I mean, to blue in the face, I understand the burden that is switched from K to 12 to higher ed. So those who don't know, IDEA, the IDEA, which is the legislation that does the accommodations for K to 12, the burden is always on the institution or the school. But when you come to college, that burden switches, and it switches just like that. And for some families, they don't understand that coming to college, that now the burden to provide documentation is on the actual student. And because of that, there are additional barriers. That's not just money, but I've had students who, part of the culture, talking about stigma, part of the culture is not to quote unquote, disclose your disability because it's not part of our culture. And so there's so many different things that I think we have to really, and I like the way you put that, maybe bring us to Capitol Hill. How do we make sure that we all have the opportunity to equal access to access? Because even in our own processes, we have our own barriers. Yeah.
So, do you mind? Okay. So in my practice, I do see a lot of teens, adolescents, college students. And a lot of times I actually I have to ask them, do you have accommodations? They're like, no, why would I have that? I'm like, because you should have accommodations. So a lot of time I advocate for them. And a lot of times is educating the parents. Because to them, like you mentioned, it's a stigma. It's in their eyes, it's looking as their kid isn't as good as other kids, or they're going to be labeled, or they're not as smart. And I try to explain to them, no, and you don't have to use it if you don't need it, but it's there. So a lot of times I do write a lot of letters for universities and for schools in support for either 504, IEP, or whatever it is, or even in universities. And we actually sit and I talk to them, and I make my letters, to their needs. Because it's not just a letter that I have in my computer that I'm going to print out. And what is it you need to be successful? And then writing the letter with them and their families. So they're able to live, and accomplish the goals they have set for themselves at school.
The only thing I would add, hopefully it complements what's been said already. Two things. One, systemically, I just want to reiterate what Dr. Lara has already said about private providers removing the access of insurance, whether that means providing sliding scale opportunities for clients seeking support, or pro bono services to the extent that you can do that. That's one way to kind of open the door to more access to services. And the second thing I would say with respect to educational settings, and this is more individual, for all the nursing, any student, any student K to 16, particularly nursing students who are here, all of us deserve good differentiated instruction, right? It shouldn't take for someone to say, hey, I need extra time on the quiz, for the faculty to say, I'm gonna give you extra time on the quiz. If a student says, I need this kind of support to be the best learner I can be, then faculty, now I'm calling us to task because I'm a faculty member as well. We should be ready and willing to do that. And it shouldn't be out of the norm to provide differentiated instructions. We shouldn't be suffering by PowerPoint for 2.5 hours at a time in any given class because our instructors haven't done their due diligence to become sharper, better, more relevant instructors. And so differentiated instruction is also a way to provide better access to services.
Dr. Hannon, it just so happens we had someone online who asked a very similar question. So can you expand just a little bit more to answer this person's question about how do we as educators, would you recommend we support students who we know are neurodiverse but do not have those accommodations?
Yeah, I'll do my best again. I think I come from a family of K-12 educators. And what I've learned over time is that K-12 educators are the best educators, teachers, and instructors. College or faculty have never taken a course on good instruction. How is it that faculty members who teach scores of undergraduates have never taken a course on instruction, on how to teach? How you gonna teach and you ain't never been taught how to teach, right? And so I think the answer to that question is for all of us to take the business of teaching seriously. Good teaching is hard work. Good teaching is hard work. And you'll know you have good instructors based on how hard they work and the fruit of that hard work. Those are some of the things that I'm thinking of when it comes to faculty investing time, energy, resources. As much as we may get resources from our institutions, our departments to go to conferences and things like that, some of that has to be devoted to sharpening our instructional strategies, our pedagogical strategies, so that our students can optimize their learning. We are literally in the driver's seat, and we don't want to take them on a long, winding, bumpy road to get these learning outcomes. We want to make their learning experiences valuable because they will become educators. Whether you're a nurse practitioner or not, you will always have the obligation to educate. You're going to be educating your clients and your consumers on the conditions that they have or the challenges that they're facing, and they're going to take their cues from us as faculty. And so investing in good instructional practice and learning how to do it is critical for any of us who are in teaching roles.
So I specifically took courses in nursing, in education and pedagogy, because I knew my PhD program was not going to teach me how to teach.
Indeed.
So I actually completely agree with you, Dr. Hannon. Mr. Watson or Dr. Lara, do you have any comments on that area?
So yeah, I know when I do my training for faculty, I always ask faculty, are they educators or are they gatekeepers? And I make them choose one. You can't be both, you know. And I think you had a slide in your presentation that you had these questions that you should be asking, you know. And and that's as a person that works in the space of accommodations, you know. And again, we also work with students directly and we ask the questions that, you know, about their functional limitations and what their needs are. But, I think on the education system side, we have to be able to collaborate with faculty to say, let's talk about the way you're teaching, the way you're designing the course, or sometimes, you're right, you could get a person teaching a class, but they're teaching a class that was assigned to them, or they're, or the instructions was assigned on how to teach it. And I remember one time I had a faculty member where, a student came in and they didn't have documentation and they were asking for extra time on exams. And I went to the faculty and I said, what's the purpose of the timed exams in your course? And she goes, well, I just got here. I don't understand why there's timed exams in the first place. And she said, and she removed the time for all of her exams and quizzes for the whole class. She's like, because the essential requirements of that particular course was not to test you on how fast you can think of the answer.
Say that.
And so, I think we don't have those conversations as we probably should. I think, and I love the way you put it, is you have to have that ability to have multiple means. We talk about UDL principles a lot in our office. You have to have the opportunity to have multiple means, be able to adapt, because if you are a faculty, I'm hoping you're looking to be an educator and not a gatekeeper to your field. And I think that's why I love the way you put it in your presentation and the questions you had, because that's exactly what we need to see more of,
Well, again, please join me in thanking Dr. Michael Hannon, Dr. Daisy Lara, and Mr. Terry Watson for joining us today. We're going to move to close our program by having a closing performance by our spoken word artist, Sir Dominique Jordan. So, Sir Dominique, the floor is yours, sir.
What's going on, everybody? I'm gonna just get y'all out here quick with this poem. But I do want to say that these poems that I wrote, typically I'm a spoken word artist. So I got maybe 1,000 poems in my head that I could just hit at any time that I hopefully feel are relevant to whatever space that I'm sharing it in. But I wrote these pieces, I started writing these pieces a few weeks ago and felt very passionate, not only about my experience last year when I got invited, but also reading y'all bios, all 3 of y'all bios. And I'm like, man, like, I kind of feel like, even though I'm not in nursing or anything like that, but just being a Black father, right? My son's Black, Dominican, Puerto Rican, he all the things, checks a lot of boxes, right? But I dealt with those times where, like, my son, it was a while till he started speaking. I'm like, what's wrong with this dude? Is something wrong with this dude? And I'm like, maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe something's wrong with the world around us to be able to provide him what he needs. And now, like, he's an incredible 8-year-old. He got a 4-year-old brother that he's raising up and helping out in a lot. And I don't know, I just felt really inspired by everything y'all shared today. So hopefully y'all felt inspired by this poem. Virtual school felt like a new country where people spoke his stutter step language. His speech pathologist, Burnett, blunt and honest, sat with him on Zoom day by day, week by week. You see differently, she said. stirring her espresso like a compass. Don't apologize for how the world looks to you. Learn to map it. She taught him to translate his detours into directions, how to ask for time, to script the pause, to harness hyper-focus. She taught him accommodations were not gifts, but his right. After the pandemic, school was sometimes a jar of expectations. His hands fought against the handshake. His memory hiccuped as he walked two paths, the safe one of apologizing for being, or the unknown where he was seeking for a sense of a belonging. He asked for a quiet room. He asked for the prompt ahead. And they blinked. They ridiculed. They said he needed a specialist. I bet those nights he dreamed in high contrast, the river of learning resuming. A classroom where desks rearranged themselves like organs, where questions were a chorus, not a single voice judged. He might imagine a place that matched the rhythm of his mind, where having differences wasn't a problem to solve, but a language to learn. But transforming imagination in the institution is a cold city of papers, policy memos, budgets, people who measure worth in boxes. While change takes time, change takes courage, change takes design. What if our educational institutions met students where they already were, where they wouldn't have to hide from themselves and use books like shields, but more so willed them towards victory? Imagine a table, a long one, where students could sit, breathe in the storm of society while also being a small, dangerous hope blooming. The mind is a hurricane of maps and memories and syllables, turning a personal truth into public architecture. Neurodiversity is not a mercy to be granted, but a gift to be arranged. At my coffee table, I lit a lamp and began to write, but the pen trembled as if it knew the stakes. I paused, fingers hovering over the paper, heart a metronome, and wondered, how do you guide a room to hold a human? I wrote these few lines and stopped because sometimes the only honest thing to do is to leave the next step unwritten until someone is actually ready to listen. That's my piece. Thank y'all so much.
So I think you all recognize why we invited Sir Dominique to come back and join us this year. Thank you, sir. I always find something in what you leave us with. So as we leave to close, I want to thank again everyone online who joined us today for our program. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us here. Again, thank Dr. Michael Hannon, Dr. Terry Watson, Dr. Daisy Lara, and our spoken word artist, Sir Dominique Jordan. For those of you who registered to attend the reception in the PRC immediately following, we'll meet you downstairs in the PRC. We do this lecture every fall in September. So join us next year for the 5th annual Gunter-Gooding DEI lecture series that will be brought to you in September of 2026. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.